Guys, don't forget to get social with us. We are active. We are on social media, so please follow our Facebook page at Journey of HV and also subscribe to our new YouTube channel, Journey of HV. All right, Journey Church family, it's time to quiet your hearts and your minds for the Word of God. Pastor Peter Jones is coming to deliver a word that is going to empower you, uplift you, and encourage you in your spirit today and help you to draw closer to God so that you can know who you are in Him and who He is to you.
We are in the second part of a series called The End of Me. The End of Me, the second part of the series. And what we started with when we started last week with this series, we said that the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure that a man discovered hidden in a field. And we looked at what Jesus was talking about, this hidden treasure. And that means that the kingdom is, or the heaven is like, which means there's a competing kingdoms. That means there's different dominions or different domains in which you can live under. And so when he says the kingdom of heaven is like, he's explaining a different kingdom, a different culture. And he's saying there's something that you're not familiar with, that you may not be as familiar with, that exists, but you have to look for it. You have to try to find it. It's hidden, and you have to uncover it. You have to seek after it. We'll look at more of that today. You have to seek after it. And so when you hear Jesus explain this, you say, well, why would I need to do this? What's going on? And he says, well, he begins to explain in his very first sermon how to find this kingdom. And he says, this is not a secret. I'm going to tell you right from the beginning, right on the onset, if you follow me, this is the message that you're going to hear over and over again. And so here it is. This is how you define this hidden kingdom. And then he takes us to Matthew, the 5th chapter, where we start reading and hearing about this sermon. And this was just the start of the sermon. The sermon actually goes about 2 more chapters, go to the 7th chapter of Matthew. And you can hear Jesus explaining what it's like to find this kingdom. And he does so by what we call the Beatitudes. We start learning about these eight things, these 8 principles in the Beatitudes in Matthew, the 5th chapter. And he starts off by saying, blessed. Saying if you want this kingdom, if you want to seek this happy, fulfilled life, you want to have the joy of the Lord in your life, if you want to be fulfilled, this is what those people do. This is what it's like to be in that kingdom. He says, blessed. Blessed. And when we say blessed, when we looked at it last week, we said blessed life is living with a God-given joy or satisfaction regardless of your circumstances. So he says when you find this hidden kingdom, what you find is people who are happy regardless of their circumstances. They have the joy of the Lord. They have something to look forward to. They have hope. They have something inside them that is different. Because our society, the culture that you live in, if you live within the earthly kingdom of the kingdom of man, what you tend to do is focus on happiness being circumstantial or situational. And he says, but the people in the kingdom of heaven are satisfied regardless of that condition. And so he begins to explain some of the characteristics, and then he tells us in Matthew, the 5th chapter and the 3rd verse, he says this. He said, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. There it is again. That's the kingdom of heaven that he's talking about that was hidden. He says, you have to be poor. Once again, if you were in this culture, the culture of today, it doesn't tell us that poor people are blessed. In fact, if you go into a rich person's house, one of the things we said last week is even a rich person will say, when you look at their house and you praise the beauty and the wonder of what they're living and where they're living and their cars that have their own house, what you realize is when you say that to them, they just sit there and they say, I'm just so blessed. They don't say I'm rich. I've earned this. I've worked hard at this. They say I'm fortunately blessed. So that's what this culture tells us. But Jesus says something countercultural. He says, blessed is those that are poor in spirit, those that are destitute or bankrupt, those that realize that they have nothing, nowhere to turn, nowhere to go. I don't know where I'm going to get the next thing. He says, blessed are those people. What? Happy? Full of joy? He says, this is the state that you need to be in. And what you'll realize is these first three verses, verse 3, verse 4, and verse 5, is all talking about this very central point that Jesus wants to build up to. It's how do you become a Christian is the first three verses here, verse 3, 4, and 5. And then when you look at the next verses, it's what does those people who have claimed to be a Christian look like? When you're looking at these next 8 verses. That's what really he's about to talk about here. He says, for you have to be poor in spirit. You have to reach a point where you realize that you need help. That's basically what he's saying. Have you reached the point where you realize that you can't do it on your own? That when our society tries to build you up to equip you to handle everything, we have more self-help books than in the last 20 years than ever exist. That whole industry has exploded because it's trying to tell you that you can do it on your own, that you have what it takes, that you can make it, you can work it out, that if you could just figure it out and you do these 10 steps or these 7 steps or these 3 steps, then you'll succeed. So that you can be independent from God. But Jesus is telling us something here. He's saying, no. The people that embrace the kingdom of heaven, the people that is going to have joy, are the people, regardless of their circumstance, are the people who realize that even when self-help has failed me, even when I've tried to work it on my own, I realize that I still need something beyond me. Because I've reached the end of myself, and now I need to depend on someone greater than I. Can't do it on my own. I look at TV shows on E! Network where it's a lot of the DIY shows, do-it-yourself shows. And Jesus says, you can't do it yourself. Put up the hammer. Put up what you're trying to do. He says you can't do it yourself. You got to be poor in spirit. And I told you a story last week where a homeless guy says the hardest thing that he experienced, he never realized, was not trying to find a place to stay or feeling safe, but he says the hardest thing for me to do, knowing that I'm homeless now, is the ability to ask for help. He says that was the hardest thing for me to do. It wasn't, I realized my current situation, and I realized I can find certain things that I could try to do. I'll find cardboard here. I'll find trash here. I can pick out what I need here and there. He says, but the hardest thing is when all those things failed, for me to get the courage up and ask for help. And I believe that many of us, we think we believe, but we never ask for help. God, I need you to do. In fact, if I read this same verse, and I read it last week, it says Matthew 5 and 6. In the Message version, it says this: you're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. When you're at the end of me, with less of you and more of God as his rule. In fact, this is not foreign. We see Jesus is at the start of his ministry, and he's telling us this story. He's predicting his own ministry because over and over again, people came up to Jesus. There was a woman who had a whole bunch of issues. They call it the issues of blood. She had an issue of blood, and what did she do? She realized that after 12 long years, she went running, she went searching for answers. She's tried to do everything within her strength to find a solution to her problem. And when she came to the end of herself, she had to run and ask for help from Jesus. And she says, I may not get there, but if I can just touch the hem of his garment. She goes, I just believe that he's the one that can help me. On the way, the centurion soldier came to Jesus. All these people are surrounding him. But the centurion soldier who says, I have a servant in my house that is sick. He's about to die. And he's desperate. And he's running through the crowds. He sent message to Jesus. Jesus, I need your help. Because he realized with all the resources that he had, everything at his disposal, he could not do it of his own. He was poor in spirit. And he needed help. Over and over we see this pattern in Scripture. And the people that realize that they need help and they reach out to Jesus, Jesus said to them, there's no greater faith that I've seen in all of Israel. Because it was the people that were outside who were looking in and said, I see what this culture has to offer me. But I also see that there's something better. There's a kingdom that has it a little better. And I need to go after that. And so here Jesus is telling them, you have to be at the end of yourself to experience the kingdom. In fact, he said it this way best. He says, when Jesus heard this in Mark 2:17, he says, he told them, healthy people don't need a doctor. It's sick people that do. I come to call not those who think they are righteous. And we're going to talk about this today. But those who know they are sinners, those who know that they're at the end of the road. If you think you got it, he says, you don't need me. He says, but those that have reached the end of me, they know they need help. And so last week we ended, Lord, help me with. Lord, help me with. And we said, fill in the blank. What do you want the Lord to help you with? Where is it that you're at the end of me and you need God to step in? That's what we talked about last week. Today, I want to continue where we left off. Still focusing on the Beatitudes, focusing on the next verse. The very next verse after verse 5, after 5 and 3 is verse 4, where Jesus focuses on not only do you have to be poor in spirit to experience the kingdom of heaven, he says, but you have to mourn. When I look at that, I'm going, what? How does this have to do with becoming a Christian? And he says, you have to mourn. In fact, he says it this way in Matthew 5 and 4. He says, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. So what is it that I have to mourn over? When you think of mourning, you think that somebody has lost a life. There's been death somewhere. Then I remember Jesus saying that if you want to follow me, you want to be one of my disciples, you got to pick up your cross. Cross is a place where there's going to be death. And follow me. He says, you have to die to this life. You have to die to your independence. Because life tells us that our whole lives we're being taught to be more independent. We're being taught to grow up, to be more self-sufficient, to depend on ourselves, to be more in self-control. And so the way this culture, the way this kingdom teaches us is to be more self-reliant. And so if I can just do it myself, and if I can depend on myself, and I can build up everything for me, and Jesus is saying, wait a minute, the kingdom of heaven, you have to die to that. You have to die to that and be dependent on God. So there's a mourning. What am I mourning? I'm mourning my own self-control. Michael said it this morning. You got to create a place for God to be the Lord of your life. To sit on the throne of your heart, and that you take your direction from him. And so therefore, for me, I have to mourn the fact that I gotta give up my own ability to control my own destiny, and I gotta say, all the plans of man may be good, but God's plan is better for my life, and I need to focus on what his plan is for my life. So I got to mourn my dreams and what I think was for me. And I got to replace that with a yearning for him. That's what Paul is saying. This is what Jesus is saying. Jesus is saying, wait a minute. You have to mourn your life and you got to make God the Lord. There's a death somewhere. In fact, Paul says it in Colossians 3:3. He says it this way, for you died to this life. And your life is hidden with Christ. You have now real life. You have a new life. He says it in 1 Corinthians 5:17. He says, but you are a new creation. That means something died. And now I have to seek after his will. So I have to mourn myself. Then he goes on in the next verse. This is all just becoming a Christian. He says, first you got to be poor in spirit and realize that you have a lot of problems, you have a lot of issues, and you don't have any solution of your own to be able to overcome it. Then he goes in and he goes, now that you realize that you have no control and that you don't need to be in control, you need to yield control, and that means you have to die to this life. Then the next thing he says, in the very next verse, he says that you have to be meek. He says, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. He's saying you have to be humble. You have to be humble. He says you got to get to the place where you realize that I can't do it, Lord. Lord, I submit to your will, not mine. And many of us are still holding on to control of our lives. We haven't released, we haven't submitted to his plan. We're saying, you know what? I don't see it, Lord. I don't see where the end is going to be. I don't see how it's going to turn out. So we just keep holding and white-knuckling it, thinking it's going to be better. And God is saying, humble yourself. Realize that I know the plans that I have for you. And my plan is to prosper you. Trust me, submit to me, be meek, and you'll inherit the kingdom. Look at that. If you're meek, everything in the earth is yours. If you humble and submit yourself to my will over your life. That's what he said. This is just on the way into being in the kingdom. But this is what I like most. This was a brilliantly crafted message. I was like, wow, his whole life was explained in his first message to the people. Here he is. He goes on, and the heart of the message, the heart of the gospel is found in the very next verse, the fourth verse, where Jesus continues to talk about what it takes to be in the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God. So let's look at this cornerstone verse, and I want to spend some time here and break it down. Matthew 5:6, he says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. I want to focus on this. It does not say, blessed are those who hunger and thirst after bigger things, who want blessings in their life, those who just want the blessings of God in their life. It doesn't say, blessed are those people who just want all the good things that life has to offer. A better career, better home, bigger, all the relationships that I want. He didn't say blessed are the idealist who gets everything they want in life. He didn't say any of those things. But he says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst after something else besides pursuing happiness. And what does our Constitution say here in the United States of America? We have the right to pursue happiness. He says, no, blessed aren't those people who go after the pursuit of happiness. He says, no, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for rightness, for righteousness. Psychologists, sociologists will tell you that there's a core need in every single person. And all of us are seeking righteousness. You say, what? See, that's a word that we don't use that much in our normal culture. In other words, they would say, psychologists would say, yes, we all seek righteousness, which is right standing. And what does right standing mean, or being righteous? What does that mean, or in right standing? It means that I have the approval or the acceptance of something. I've received the acceptance and the approval of another. And deep down inside, we're all seeking for acceptance and approval from another. So Jesus is hitting at a core. He's hitting at a core theme that is in humanity's, that's a thread throughout humanity, that we all are seeking to belong. We're all seeking some type of approval and to be received, to be in right standing or righteous standing with something. It's innate in all of us. We first seek it of ourselves. And we sit there many times, we look and when we get in a quiet place, our own quiet place, and we begin to think, and we feel like we are a charlatan. We feel like we're a fraud. We feel like, many of us feel like, I know this is my public image and people think I could do this, but really, I'm afraid. People think I'm fearless, but really, I'm a coward. And you sit there in this duplicity, wanting people to accept the person or the image of the person that you presented. Because if they accept the image of the person I'm presented, then some way they think they've accepted me, but they truly don't know me. They truly don't understand my fear. In fact, we fall in love. When we say we fall in love with people who've seen us at our worst and love us no matter what. Accept us, receive us, approve of us no matter what. In fact, if you go to a job, you're looking for a career, you go on a job interview, what are you looking for? You're looking for righteousness. When you go on your first date, what are you looking for? You're looking for righteousness. You're looking to be accepted, to be received, to be approved. And what you're doing, all the anxiety that those situations build up in you, what is it doing? Why is that anxiety there? Why are you feeling the way you're feeling? It's because you just want the boss, the manager to call you back and say, I've received you into this company. I've accepted you. We approve of you. And so you've been working hard to be approved by another. To be received, you want that girl to call you back and said, I receive what you've been putting down. We all want it, to be accepted. So the question is, what makes you feel approved, accepted, received? Or feel that I am the right one, that I've been accepted just as I am. What have you hunger and thirst and you're pursuing to get that shored up with? You see, because even when you get accepted on the job and they just accept you into the position, what do you have to do every day? You have to work and earn it over and over again. You really don't feel secure. You really don't feel deep inside that they've accepted me and they have approved of me. No matter, even when the girl called you back, now I got the pressure of a second date. So what do I got to do? I got to earn this even more. I got to work better at it. I got to work harder at it to make this right, to be in right standing with her. Underneath it all, we're all insecure. Underneath it all, we all feel like we're hypocrites in some way, in some relationship, in some arena of our lives. We're all hungering and thirsting after right standing. And Jesus says that the key is to hunger and thirst after the perfect righteousness. Now, what is the perfect righteousness? You see, everything I've already described to you, we are struggling for that self-acceptance, and we're struggling for acceptance by others. This is all for somebody else. And so we're working and we're searching and we're thirsting after that and we're pursuing that. But Jesus says, that's not perfect righteousness. He says, that's not perfect. That's not who you really need to get approval from. That's not who you really need to get acceptance from. What's deep in your heart is you're really trying to get approval from God. Because if you can get the approval of God, he goes, you can walk out in strength in any other relationship. You can walk out in confidence in it. See, when I know that I'm walking in the purpose of God, I can walk through any door and say, here I am. Take me just I am, because God has already approved me. He's already put a seal on me. So I can walk with confidence. People would say, well, that's, you could be, why don't you accept their suggestion when they say you should take this job over in St. Louis and stuff like that? Because I'm like, that's not for me. Well, how can you be so sure? Because I already know where God has placed me. I am confident where he's placed me. And so I can say no with all confidence that that's the right choice, because I've decided to follow after the one who's already put his seal of approval on me. I'm not looking for approval from you. And so Jesus says, I want you to hunger and thirst after perfect righteousness. He said, because this, if you're looking for anywhere else, he says, there is no one righteous. This is Paul talking. He says, there is no one righteous. There's no place you're going to find a right standing. And if you think you're right, you are mistaken. There's no one righteous. Not, if you didn't get it the first time, he goes, not even one. Not even one. But the problem is, we have a bunch of people who are walking around thinking they're righteous. I got this. You see how good of a husband I am? See how good of a father I am to my kids? You see how successful I am in my job? You see how, and we use these things to measure our acceptance or our approval. And doing those things, all those things, is things that you've earned, that you're working hard after, that you're pursuing. You're depending on your own worth. Who's in control? I told you have to be meek and humble. Who's in control? You're still in control. Jesus said that's not where you need to be. I already asked you to release control. So he started by saying you needed to be meek. And now you can't just be a moralist. A moralist is a person who realizes that they are poor in spirit, that they are religious people. They even ask for forgiveness. They mourn their own sin. They realize that they're sinners. And they say, God, forgive me. But being moralists, they still focus on their own works, on what they can do to approve a right standing with God. And everything they try to do of their own, God is saying, there's no effort that you can do of your own that's going to make you approved by me. There's nothing. I told you this verse is the central key of the gospel, is that there's nothing on your own, no effort that you can do, no behavior that you can act that's going to put you in right standing with the Father. Because that's not going to happen. Christians, on the other hand, people who believe in Jesus, they believe that, wait a minute, I didn't have to do anything. I'm looking to the one. I'm searching for the one, the perfect one who stood in my place, the righteous one of God. He's the only one that I'm going to look to because he's outside of me. See, that's why when you hunger and thirst, if you had it, you wouldn't be hungry and thirsty. But you're hungering and thirsting because you realize, I don't have it. This is not within my control. This is something beyond me. And so I'm hungering and thirsting. I'm going to pursue after that. There's a righteousness that I need to pursue, and it's not my behavior. Jesus says, I've already done it. Jesus saying, wait, there's coming a time where I'm going to die on the cross, and I'm going to make that perfect sacrifice, and God is going to receive the offering that of my blood, and he's going to accept me, and his approval of me. If you accept me, you're approved. Are you hungry and thirsting? So he said, basically saying, are you hungry and thirsting more and more after him? After Jesus. Because the more I can say, Jesus, I want you to make me accepted and approved, he says, now you're going to be fulfilled. You see, when that boss called you and said, yeah, you got the job, you felt fulfilled. When that girl called back and accepted the second invitation, you felt fulfilled. And he says, but when you realize that out of all, that you can put down your own mask, that you can stop pretending, that you don't have to pretend anymore, that I see all the ugly that's inside you, and I accept you anyway, because you've accepted my son. He says, when you realize that, he says, you'll be filled. You'll be satisfied. He says, there's going to be a new sense of purpose. There's going to be a sense of relief, relaxation, because you're going to be so satisfied. You can say, I can sit back. I can just trust God to plan out my life. I don't have to plan it out. I don't have to look at it this way. I just got to focus on what God wants for me and pursue that, because he's already accepted me. And even if man doesn't like what I'm doing and they don't like what's happening right now, I'm okay with it, because I've been approved by God. I've been accepted by him. I no longer have to fear being an imposter, because I've been accepted by God. When you realize that you come to the end of your own performance and say, God, Jesus has already performed for us. He's already been accepted. He's already done it. I no longer have to perform anymore. I can accept the grace that God has given to me. The heart of the gospel, those who hunger and thirst after righteousness. Perfect righteousness, the right standing with the Father. You will be filled. You will know that you're approved by him, and you don't have to do anything else. Even in your bad days, even the days when your behavior doesn't measure up to the standards or the laws of God, you can still say, God has accepted me. There is no way I have to walk in shame or feeling condemned, because I am the beloved of my Father. The heart of the gospel is written right here on verse 6. Those who hunger and thirst after what the work that Jesus has already done, you will be filled. When you realize there's no performance on my behalf, I can relax in the performance of our God. You've reached the end of yourself, and you're at the beginning of a new life in him. I want you to stand with me.
Wasn't that an incredible message? Did it speak to you? Did you feel that? Did you feel that in your spirit? I felt it. I felt it. Thank you, Pastor Peter, for sharing that message with us. Now it's time for us to make sure that we apply it, right? We receive the word and then we apply it. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, because guess what? On there you can watch previous sermons and catch all of our videos from our services on Sunday. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook to stay connected with us. We have a community there. We uplift each other, we encourage each other, and we hold each other accountable. So please be inspired this week, apply the word, and we look forward to seeing you at our next service.